All right, doing the thing. We're past episode 100, which again is still crazy to me, but that's where we're at. So had to. I'll tell you what. Leave a comment below if you knew the reference in the title of this video without googling. If you knew the reference in the title of the video without googling, leave a comment below. I'm just curious how profoundly nerdy the OP community is when it comes to this sort of thing. What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Full Blast. I'm your host, Raja Burrows, and today we're talking. So I started this series with, talking about all four of my shadow functions that the functions that I do not have in my function stack, and how those who share my functions can get better at the functions that we don't have. And now we get to go in the opposite direction. So this is especially for obviously for NI and TE, you're going to just hear a lot of savior preaching. But when we're talking about FI and SE, which are technically daemon functions for me, they are still higher on the list for me than SI and FE. So you are going to hear a little bit of savior energy when I'm talking about these. Again, one of the reasons I wanted to do this is because I think it's important to start to think of all of your functions as saviors, and that they're all of equal importance, of equal utility, and that it really does depend on the situation. If you're having a difficult emotional conversation with somebody that you care very deeply about, I don't give a fuck where your feeling function is in your stack. That's the function that gets used. That's not a TE conversation. It's not that TE can't be a part of it or can't support it, but if you're having a deep, emotional, heartfelt, heart-to-heart conversation with somebody, coming in with Ben Shapiro NT on crack energy, that's not the right call. And so, that's why I want to talk about all these functions. And it is my belief that once you start to really balance all four of the functions that you have, adding or being able to jury rig together these other functions or see the value in the functions that you don't have becomes astronomically easier, because now you're no longer tied to any two letters, any two human needs, you're like, oh, right, we all need validation. We all need love. We're all deciders. We're all, oh, I get it. And so, if you're having a conversation with somebody who is, I am Demon FI, single activated, it's not attached to either of my savior animals, because I'm blast play, and I, it's it can be tough for me to have FI conversations, period. But it'd be really tough if I'm having an FI conversation and somebody that I care about is trying to have an FE conversation. Holy fuck. It took me years to be able to bridge that gap. And truth be told, it only really got bridged. So as I have often credited Myers-Briggs in particular with I don't want to say fixing the relationship between my mother and I, because our relationship has always been very good. But once I figured out, once I learned Myers-Briggs, and once I was like, oh, right, FE is not the same as FI, and she's an ESFJ. Again, that's what I thought at the time. But she's lead FE, and I have FI last. Again, at the time, I thought I was an ENTJ. But again, I was like, I know that I have FI at the very fucking bottom of whatever. I was like, oh, right. That's why when we aligned, it's because we're doing the tribe validation thing, and it's TE versus FE doesn't matter. It's just DE versus DI, and we're playing the DE game, and we're great. But when T versus F matters, I'm out here trying to my baby jalopy FI is going up against her fucking Fast and the Furious car that's and again, we're just going past each other, trying to do different things. But once I understood that, I was like, oh, right. Okay, we're not going into this F dominant conversation with the same goals. That's really good to know, because now at the very least, look, FE, probably for my whole life, it's always just going to be a little clunky. A little clunky. One of the biggest reasons that I moved away from musical theater is because it was too FE. It's a very tribe over self environment, and it's a very F over T environment. So there are plenty of ENFPs and ESFPs and lead FIs and whatever, but the vast majority of people who stay in the community and who really want to build the community, whatever, they're just a lot of FE, and it's a lot about harmonizing values in the spirit of collaboration, which it's not my strongest muscle. Not saying I can't do it, but it is not a muscle that is very strong, and it's also not the biggest fish I have to fry, right? It's not like I'm lead TI and like, oh, fuck, I really need to figure out how to do the tribe harmony thing to balance out my insane first function. Like, FE is not even in my stack. Like, I need to work on my FI first before I can really start to care about playing the FE game, constantly. Of course, I can sort of, again, jury rig together my TE and my FI to like fake it for 5 minutes to get through a meeting, to do a whatever. But as far as like a day-to-day thing, FE is just, it's really, really hard for me to sustain day in, day out, 6 days a week, 8 hours a day of, musical theater rehearsal. But in the film and TV world, much more ST in general, but specifically much more TE, just because all of the technical elements are in the room all the time. Like, it's not for theater and musical theater in particular. It's like there's the cast and the music director and the choreographer and the director, and you're all sort of like building this vibe, feeling, storytelling thing together. And then a week and a half before the show opens, then you add all the technical elements. But for film and TV, you start with the technical elements, and all of those technical elements and that kind of collaboration is very, very TE oriented. For example, even down to like the shirt that I wear, right? So I remember when I was doing the show that I did a couple of years ago, The Path, I had all of my collaboration was with the hair and makeup artist, the costume designer, the props person, and figuring out like, okay, what's the energy of this character? I know that we want longish hair, but maybe it's just a little unruly. And I don't think that's the vibe that we're going for, because he does have to like tackle a Nazi in this scene. So we do want him to have some sort of like, solidness. So maybe if we take it in on the sides and then take a little bit of length off the top, it'll still give a little bit of that feral look, but not quite so out there. That's all TE. That's all like, there's no FE involved in that really, because it's about how can we make this, it's just block banging, right? And same with the shirt, right? It was like, okay, what's the FI vibe of this character? Like, who is D as a person? And again, we really do ask that. And then it's like, you know what? I think that, there was, at the time, it was like they had a small, you have to wear like these cult shirts, right? Because it's about a cult. And so we were putting on all the different cult shirts, and they're like, okay, I think that D, I think we have him as a level 3. So he's not like a brand new person, but he's like a level 3 in here, in this scene. We have a small and a medium. Let's try them both on. And it was like, and I remember saying, I'm going to be honest, Raja the human would totally try to get away with the small. And then we both looked at each other and were like, yeah, but I don't think D would. I think that D, again, the character that I was, his FI would be a little bit looser, a little bit more, casual, chill, funky hippie, I think that he'd wear something a little baggier. Right? That's a whole TEFI kind of discussion with no FE involved. But I bring up that anecdote because I think it does so clearly illustrate what FI is actually trying to do. Because, one of the things that I find difficult anecdotally, or at least that requires more effort, is if I'm having a conversation with someone with FE, and especially if they have strong FE, if that's their thing. FE is so aware of what Shave calls values on a spectrum. That's sort of how they describe it, right? All the extroverted functions, period, are looking at everything on a spectrum. They are naturally attuned to, willing to consider whatever is on the full spectrum. So, for instance, for me with my TE, I love Shave's communication style because they just throw shit out there. They have no personal attachment to the logic. They're not building it brick by brick. It's not introverted or subjective. It's hey, does this work for you? No, that's cool. Try this. Oh, that doesn't work for you? Oh, great. Try this, try this, try this. And they're just throwing stuff out there. And then whatever I want to latch onto, again, using my other three functions, if I'm all right, this is the best. So here's a really good example. They had their talk about SI, which again, I think about it all the goddamn time. And up to that point, I had my own logic about how SI logically fit into the OP system. And then they come out with this video of Clara just crushing it. And I was like, oh, great. I'm going to update my logic block banging around SI because the old idea, the old logic sucks. This new logic works better at scale. So I'm just going to start using that. Right? So that's what FE is doing just with vibe and emotional state and values and priorities. One thing that I can't even wrap my mind around Gary Vee sometimes because of how open he is to just liking new shit and how he finds that fun and interesting and exciting and energizing. And, again, because it's DE, we're talking about a lot of people and what are most people into right now? And again, because his NITI is strong enough, he is able to predict some of the trends and have that foresight, especially with his, Savior Blast. But his FE is just yeah, no. This is what's hot right now. And then when something else is hot, I'm just going to do the next hot thing because it doesn't matter to him. His identity is not attached to values. It's not that he doesn't have an identity. That's preposterous. We all have an identity. That's our big driving force in life. But his identity, because he is a lead FE, his identity is attached to his logic, his reasons. So when you get him to talk about the block banging stuff and how the watch all fits together, he's going to go 50 layers deep in a way that I, a TE user, am just not going to give a shit about doing. But when it comes to values, he'll just look for the hottest thing and then just go for that. I remember there was one there was one thing that he did. It was one of those Marvel team pick'ems. So this is a meme that went around, and it was you assemble your own superhero squad, and it's you have the leader, the mechanic, the brawn, the muscle, the hired gun, the renegade, the rogue, the whatever, right? The five archetypes, and then one of each, and you're just you have 15 points to spread across your entire team. So you can get like, you know, 2 5s, 2 2s, and a 1, or whatever you want, right? And they're sort of ranked like that. Well, so Gary Vee did one of these with social media. And it's like, here are, you know, 50, you know, I think it was like 15, 20 social media presences, and each of them had a point value attached to them. And it's like, all right, you get to pick 5 people with a point cap of like who you want on your social media team, just in terms of like who you'd want to align with, who has the most reach. And he went through this list like effortlessly. He looked, he's like, wait, you have Kim Kardashian as a 4? Okay, well, that's wrong. And he's like, honestly, like, I could be done right now. I would be willing to spend all of my 15 points on Kim Kardashian. She shouldn't even be on the list, let alone not a 5, because she is too overpowered in this particular game. I'm just going to go all in on Kim Kardashian and I'll be fine. But then he's like, well, all right, so if I'm going to go, fine, I'll play your game. I'll call her a 4. I want her. Yeah, he's really good. He's really good. Yeah, he's definitely hot right now. And I have 4 points left over. Sure, give me this person. And he had no attachment to it. It's just like, oh yeah, we're playing a game. We're playing the tribe game. Who's hot right now? Who do people like? Who's popular? What is the tribe value ranking of these people? And he just like fucking did it. And it blows my mind that he does that he's able to do that. That is enormously useful in many, many situations. And being able to tap into that can be incredibly, incredibly useful. Here's where it can get you into trouble, though. Because FE is all about tribe validation, tribe perception, tribe, whatever, it can, at times, come across as inauthentic. Because then you're like, well, hang on a second. You liked this person yesterday, and now you like this, and now this other person is suddenly better. What changed? Like, you were really into this one thing, and now you're into this other thing. Wait, no, but you didn't. I'm not following. I don't know how you made that leap. And an FE response, oftentimes, again, when they're all in on their FE, the FE is just like, yeah, but this thing is better now. I'm just going to, my only job is to align with the hot thing, not to like go 50 layers deep and sort of string along, and like go certainly not build my identity on what I like. That's not an FE thing. And if they are going to go 50 layers deep, it's going to be on the logic. It's going to be on like, okay, well, I understand this part of this algorithm goes here. And so if that algorithm, that then connects to this, and that then connects to this, and it's all in that very like clock-like mechanical way. And, it can at times, especially if the FE user doesn't articulate their thought process, or just, again, they have low TI. If they haven't done the sleep consume work on their TI, their NT and their ST, it's going to seem like they're just fucking all over the place. And like, where did that even come from? How are you able to flip from thing to thing and whatever, and I'm going to use my mother as an example because she is such a pure version of FE in so many ways. To her credit, she has gotten so much better about her TI. I mean, it's a night and day difference, what this pandemic has done to her. She's a completely different human. I have an enormous amount of respect for the growth mindset that she was able to finally tap into, in her 60s. Look, fucking better late than never. I am thrilled and delighted for her to have had that. But for a very long time, it would be like you're having a conversation with one person one day and another person the other day because their values, especially again in the case of my mother, it's feminine FE. It's just like it's so looking on the spectrum of like, well, hang on a second, but if you felt this way yesterday, why do you feel differently today? Which to me as an FI user is like, again, I'm not saying you have to like sit in the negative dark emotion, but look, if I like something one day, the odds of me liking that same thing the next day are really, really, really good. Because the things that I like are built into my identity. And I don't like once something, and especially again, God, especially me with fucking Demon FI, once something gets into my identity, the idea of removing it is like, it's not even a question. It's very much, oh my God, I have to, no, I'm not, why would I move on from this thing? If this thing needs to evolve or change, or I need to change, an aspect of something around it, sure, that's fine. But I'm not just going to like abandon this thing that I have now latched at least some part of my identity onto. I'm not going to, what? No, I can't just move on like that. In the same way, right? So and that's again, when I would talk to, so my former boss, I don't know what she was. I just know that she was lead NE. Based on my now understandings of OP and their definitions, I can say with a reasonable level of certainty that she was an ENTP, consume, play, sleep, because one of the biggest reasons that we kept talking past each other was that she was trying to speak TI, she was trying to speak like when we were talking about values and like what we care about and being a part of the company and like getting into that sort of feelingsy shit. She would be speaking her FE and I'd be speaking FI. And when we're talking about like what are the company values, it would be like, well, we have to adjust and change. Like this is what people like right now, and so we have to meet the needs. And I'm like, no, but we don't like that. That feels bad to us to do it. So why are we doing it? And she would just be like, I don't. Well, but that's just that's business. You have to go with the feeling tides of the people, and this is what people want. That's just how people work, and they're mercurial, and you just have to sort of go along with their feelings and get swept up in them, and then you let them go, and that's part of the balance. And I'm like, holy fuck, oh my God, no. And I think that that's really where I see FE get their ass kicked the most. Even if they have a strong TI, where they can really get their ass kicked is not recognizing I have feelings too. And there are things that I personally value. That's just everybody. Like that is just being human, right? The difference is that if FE doesn't incorporate some of those values into their identity, then they are relying solely on their TI to hold up the entire fucking sandcastle. Which can work. You can certainly make a perfectly robust TI sandcastle. But boy, throwing a little bit of FI in there, that's going to be a really nice anchor for your FE that just wants to align with what everyone is feeling right now, right? When you walk into a room and if you're like, I'm feeling pretty good. You walk into a party and you're like, I had some Chipotle. I had a shop before I got here, but I had the Chipotle, so I'm not like super, super trash, but like, yeah, I'm kind of vibing it. And I was like, out with my boys, and now we roll into this party, and we see the host, get some drinks, talk to some girl, right? You're like, hey, I'm vibing it. Like I'm at like a solid 7, right? And you walk in and the room is just like a fucking 4. That is when FI and really holding on to your own values and or emotional state can be enormously powerful. So I remember Ed Milet talking about this, but again, this is not unique to Ed Milet. Lots of people have said this in varying ways. It's the difference between a thermostat and a thermometer, where thermometers take the temperature of the room and adapt to it, and thermostats set the temperature of the room and make the room the temperature that they want it to be. FE is really, really good at that, for sure. They can get, especially, if they're blaster FE people, they can like, all right, I'm aware of the feeling state of everybody. I'm going to consciously buoy the feeling state of everybody and align everybody with the values and the morals and the emotional state and the vibe. It's going to be great, right? They can totally do that. But it's been my experience and observation that there already needs, so like, let's say you roll in and you're at a 7, right? A scale from 1 to 10, good vibes. If you roll in and you're at a 7 and the party overall is like a 5 or a 5.5, you can work with that, right? You as an FE user, they're close enough to a 7 that you can like, yeah, you can buoy the room a couple of points. Absolutely. If the room is at a 4, yeah, now you're fucked. Now you have to work so hard to buoy the entire room up from a 3. And oftentimes what I've seen a lot of FE people do is they'll just sink to like a lower energetic level because that's just where the room is at, and they feel obligated to align with the vibe and the values of the room. And that, again, that can be really, really dangerous, especially if the room is toxic, especially if the room, it's if the room is trying to bring you down and they're just like wallowing in their own self-pity, and that's how they're finding validation in that misery loves company kind of way. And you roll in and you're like, what is up, my friends? Like, that's gonna be a weird vibe. And it's not that an FI user wouldn't adjust to that or wouldn't care about that. But one thing that I've seen a lot of FI users do, and one thing that they can do really well, is if they're like, you know what? I'm at a 7. And I'm going to do what I can to help you guys. Let me do some shit for you. Like, you know what? What's wrong? Like, well, went to the market and they didn't have chips, but they did have chips. And then Jamie just forgot to get chips because Jamie's an asshole. He was texting his buddy, be like, you know what? Give me 5 minutes. I'm gonna just run and get some chips. If that's the problem, let me fix it. Shit, yeah. And what allows an FI user to do that is that they don't feel obligated to like vibe with the rest of the tribe who's at a 3. They may get brought down, and of course, like their emotional state, if they're not completely closed off people, like of course it's going to affect them and they're going to want to help. But the FI user sees their emotional state as being their own and their responsibility and their identity. And so they're not looking for validation when it comes to values and emotional states. Their responsibility is like, no, this is my identity. I have to honor this. And, that's just what I have to do. That's my obligation, my responsibility. And I sort of touched on this in the FI, the FE for FI users video, the previous one that I did. But one thing that boy, us FIs could stand to do a little better at is when we aren't feeling so great, choosing to go into spaces where there is a little bit more of that good vibes only kind of vibe to sort of bring us out of that funk, and being like, hey, you know what? This room is popping. If you let go of your identity for a little bit, I think that you would find that your mood would improve, right? And on the FE side of things, being able to go, you know what? I'm feeling great. And I'm going to hold on to this great feeling and not stop believing. And I'm going to do what I can to help these other people, but ultimately, I'm going to choose to take responsibility for my emotional state and forego the tribe validation that I would get from aligning with them. Because that's the danger, right? If you are, especially, again, lead FE, feminine FE, kind of FE anywhere this can happen, you're looking for validation and tribe connection on the spectrum of feelings. And you're looking to align externally with the values and feelings of others. And that is how an FE user is primarily going to want to get their get that tribe connection and validation and validate others. And, oh my God, I'm so special because they said that I am special, right? And they're going to be doing that with their emotions, with their feeling state. And a really good way to do that is to just align with them and say, oh, you know what? Okay, I was feeling good. I had my Chipotle burrito and I had a shot, but you know what? That's not the vibe of the room. That's not the vibe of the room. The vibe of the room is a little down. So I'm just going to, you know what? Maybe it's not that kind of night. I'm going to sink down. I'm going to get down to that 3 level. I'm just going to be here for them, and we're going to vibe, and we're going to feel feelings, and we're going to commiserate and whatever, because I'm responsible for getting validation from other people. And if that's what their emotional state is, then aligning with that is going to get me what I want, validation wise, which again, that might be the right call. But I encourage you FE users to ask if it's the right call. Ask if it's the right call. And being able to say, you know what, at least for tonight, I feel so positive, and I feel like I want to bring so much joy and positivity into the room that I have to honor that, right? Nobody died. It's not like, it's not like, yo, Doug's dog just died. Like, we're like having a kind of a memorial service for Feeney. Could you maybe not come in, try to party it up? Yeah. Okay, fine. That is an instance where your FE aligning might be very, very useful. But if it's not like that, and if everybody's just kind of being shitty and fixed mindset and townsfolky and whatever, you don't have to align with that. You just don't. Maybe you do something to help fix the problem. Maybe you say, you know what, let's put on some music. Let's try to lift the vibe, right? Maybe one person will get up to a 5, and then he'll pull that other person up to a 5, and they'll pull that other person up to a 5. And now we're all at 5s and you're at a 7. And then together we can get the 5s up to a sprite, and we can lift the spirits. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's super fair. And then you can go back to doing your FE. But I've seen so many FE users, especially lead FE users, feel this intense obligation to read the room and read the tone of the room and compromise their own emotional state because of the room. And that can be really, really damaging. Again, it's not that FIs can't do this, not that they won't do it, but it's not their first impulse. The FI user, because their emotional state is so tied to their identity, there's, they're like, well, how? No, but this is how I feel. I can't just not feel this way because that would be abandoning who I am in this moment. Now, again, the FI users, case in point, can absolutely get fucked off by just like going way too deep and like getting mired in a negative emotion or whatever, which again, not always the most useful thing, but like their ability to sort of stay true to themselves and stay true to that emotional state is something that I think a lot of FE users would really benefit from, because then they're not, again, especially the savior FEs, they're not going to be, blown every which way trying to like, well, okay, I have to do this thing and they're really sad. So I have to be sad with them. I can't just not be sad. If a fellow tribe member is sad, I have to connect with them on an emotional level by aligning with them and like having that chemical exchange and having that exchange of like, all right, well, I'm going to give you some of my chemicals and you give me some of your chemicals. And then, in the space between, God, I'm just name dropping songs like crazy today. In the space between, that's where like the us chemical vibe can exist. And then like I take some of that and then put it into me and you, right? It's very useful. It's very useful, but not always. And that's really what I want to get to with this whole series. All of this, every function is useful in the right scenario. Every function is a fucking rock star when it is right. I will never forget my college graduation, Wynton Marsalis spoke, or almost spoke, because my understanding of him is he's some sort of lead TI kind of guy. Again, he seems like the archetype of ISTP. I don't actually know. I've not really studied him, but he seems to have that like cool guy jazz vibes. Like, yeah, I'm Wynton Marsalis. I'm a fucking badass. And it was about to rain on the day of the big commencement. So they got through all the like, everybody marched in, got through all the doctoral students and the master's students. And then the way that they did is that you walked at, your individual college, right? Like whatever your major was, that's where you actually walked. But he was supposed to give the commencement speech. He gets up there, and it was very clear that we maybe had 6 minutes left. And I remember, like, as we were leaving the field, that's when it started to rain. So, like, we got in under the wire. What he said is he got up here and he said, I want you to know that I have prepared a full speech. The full transcript will be available online. But if there's one thing I've learned in jazz, it's always be appropriate to the situation. And he's like, so as a result, I'm going to read a very abbreviated version of my speech for you right now. It was like a 2.5 minute speech. It's a fucking great speech. I don't remember it at all, but I remember it being very, very, very good. And then he's like, thank you very much. Gets off, a few closing remarks, book it out of there, thunderbolts and lightning. How many fucking songs am I going to quote today? God damn. It was very, very frightening. So that's sort of like the overarching theme of this whole series is every function is right when it's right. And, part of our growth as humans is to learn to read the room. and learn, right? So like to me, like the pinnacle of humanity, like to me, the real alphas of the world are the ones who can walk into any room, assess the situation, and say, okay, I know what function is needed right here, right now. And then they just fucking do it. And they do it the best that they can. And it doesn't, whether they succeed, whether they fail, doesn't fucking matter. They're like, you know what? This was the right function to use. This was the right thing to do in the moment. He was not so tied. Winton was not so tied to his own DI. Again, if he's an ISTP, I have no fucking idea what he is. But regardless, he's like, you know what? My identity does not matter right now. It's not about me. It's about the tribe. It's about serving them. And this is the best way that I can do that. And that's really what it comes down to. And I think we see it a lot with the FEs. And so again, I encourage you FEs, when you walk into a room and the vibe isn't quite right, take a second before deciding to align with that. Take a second, see if you can anchor some of that emotion to your identity. Not all of it, just a little bit. And then from there, then go, okay, yeah, I think, you know what? You're right. Tonight isn't a 7. But it's not a 3, it's a 5. So let's bring it down to a 5, bring them up to a 5, and then we can harmonize that way. All right, that's all I got for today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye!